Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book writer, artist, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you live on the internet. If you would like to support this YouTube channel, if you enjoy the artwork that I share, the videos, you find them useful, interesting, then please go subscribe to my Patreon at patreon.com/GERIMI. You will get an additional bonus live stream video once a month. I also share comics and artwork, more blog posts, more behind the scenes work in progress. So you can subscribe there. If you'd like to read some of my comics online, you can check out pages from my current series Morning Star, which I'm running as a webcomic at my newsletter. It's news.jeremy.net. So you can head over there and check it out. Morning Star is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven told as a Western. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. There you can find the trade carrying the first 4 issues of Morning Star, as well as my previous graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. So, see, we've already got some folks in the chat. I see Art with Amar in the chat. Hey, good to see you, man. Thanks for dropping in. He says happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you all. All right. So, today, figure drawing. I'm gonna go through some bad figure drawings from previous weeks, and basically, for those who are new to my channel, I take figure drawing classes once a week, and I feel like it's very important for my development as a comic book artist. I'm constantly trying to improve my draftsmanship, my craft, my grasp of anatomy, gesture, form, volume, and a big part of improving is learning to self-evaluate, self-correct, to fix problems in your artwork. So, in doing that, I like to take drawings that I've done in the past in class, and for every good drawing that I do in figure drawing class, there's 10 bad ones. And I save some of these bad drawings so I could come back, take a look at them, analyze them, and basically fix the corrections. I see Mark is in the chat. Hey Mark, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for dropping in. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit just to make sure we can get all the way down to the bottom of the drawing board here. Let's see. That should do it. And I'm going to scoot these over a little bit so I've got a little bit more room to draw. It's funny. I think as artists, most of us struggle with that whole question of how do we improve our craft? How do we get better? And for many years, I've struggled with that too. And now I'm at the point where I understand the process. And the real challenge is simply making time for it on a weekly basis, which is part of what this YouTube is about. Really it comes down to, first off, figuring out that something is wrong with your drawings, which I think most of us, artists tending to be self-critical, are really good. We're really good at being self-critical of our work and just saying, oh wait, my drawings are messed up, this doesn't look right. But the next step is actually taking the time to correct those things. And that's where this comes in, having some anatomy books handy and helpful to look at for reference, and then just looking at your drawings, not just saying, oh, it's messed up, but actually making an assessment of what's going on. Like, for instance, I'm looking at this drawing here, and the volumes feel a little bit off in the sense that I don't feel like there's enough of the back of the cranium, but as well, the face feels a little bit too smushed, and you're sort of looking at the underside, looking up at the figure, but it's a little bit wonky in terms of it being squished. So the kind of stuff that I like to have, to be useful is like I've got like a little small skull here for reference. And in addition to that, that thing's kind of tiny to see. So then I've got this guy, a life-size skull. And this is one of those things where I can kind of look at it as I draw, put it at angles similar to the pose, and I can get a sense of what it is that I'm doing wrong here. I can look and see where the volumes underneath, like, you know, on the actual human body, this is a rounded turn. It's not a hard, sharp turn like it is when you're looking at the skeleton. But when you're looking at the skeleton, now you can get a better look at that and realize where the planes are shifting. The fact there's an underside plane here. Now, normally there's extra, flesh under here. It's kind of nice and rounded. Let's see, some more comments in the chat. I see Amar says I should record the intro, the public service announcement, so I can just have that to play at the start of the stream. I've thought about doing that in the past, but with a live stream, right now I'm using my phone to stream from. So if I were doing it from my desktop, I could probably set it up to play that at the beginning. But when I'm doing it from my phone, I don't have the ability to do that. So it really just depends on what I'm using to stream. And you know what? It's good to keep me on my toes, to have to, think on my feet and give it a little bit of a twist depending on when I'm doing it. Yeah, I do actually, in my older videos, I did have a pre-recorded intro and outro. So that was when they were just pre-recorded. But when I'm doing it live, I'm just used to doing it over and over again. And if some weeks I stumble or I change it up a little bit, it's not a big deal. So yeah, it would be useful to have it ready to pre-play, but I don't. Let's see. And, Amar says also thinks it would be good as an outro as well, which I kind of try to say the same stuff at the end. Mark says, I'm studying at the Watts Atelier online school. Have you heard of them? Yes, I have heard of the Watts Atelier. I have never attended it, but I'm a big fan of Jeff Watts and his students. They also have a really good YouTube channel where they share some of their workshops, where they just either be looking over Jeff's drawing board or over the shoulder of one of the other instructors while they're doing a figure drawing workshop. And I remember one year, this is many, many years ago, probably 20 years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, I think Jeff Watts was giving a demo that I sat in on, and I brought my drawing board and sketched from his work. I'm in Southern California, but I'm in the LA area, so San Diego is a little bit far for me. But I would actually love, I know you said you're taking the online classes, but I would really actually love an opportunity to go and take like one of their week-long intensive workshops and actually study at the Watts Atelier. I have high regard for them, and I think they do great work there. So let's see. Amar says, we can be so critical that it can frustrate, when we were talking about being able to assess and be critical of your work. He said, we can be so critical that it can frustrate one even from working on getting better, creating a reason to procrastinate, which is very true. Perfectionism is a bad habit that can prevent progression as well. And he said, it was for me. And Mark says, Jeff Watts have a Frank Frazetta inking course out next month. That's awesome. That's something I should look into. So when I'm starting with this particular head, because I think all of the heads on here have something wonky about them. So I'm starting with this head, and the main thing I'm trying to focus on is just that basic volume that I got wrong in the initial version. So just getting, and again, this is one of those things where I'm looking at this drawing, and I can't go back in time and see what the model was actually doing. I can only assess from looking at this that the model was turned slightly, let's bring this big old guy back up again. So the model was turned slightly away from me, not a full profile, but turned a little bit away, and their head was turned away from me as well. So you're kind of seeing more of the underside. So when I'm starting with this, I'm basically trying to incorporate the information of what I see here structurally in the skull into this rough sketch. So, not a full profile. And one of the things I've found is sometimes I may look at what the model was doing, and what the model was doing was subtle. So it might have been just kind of slightly turned away, and that subtlety may not read well in a figure drawing. And so it's not a matter of exaggeration, but it's a matter of saying, well, what reads? So you may actually push the pose a little bit more. I think that it can be confusing sometimes where people talk about exaggerating artwork. And I think that there's one difference between being cartoony for cartoony's sake or exaggerating it because you feel like it helps you express your style. In my case, the idea of exaggerating it for this particular pose, because I think that there are definitely times when it is appropriate, if not necessary, to put your own personal style on whatever you're drawing. But in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm exaggerating it only to the degree that it helps clarify what I'm drawing. So trying to make it so I can see more of that underside of the jaw. I might need to pull this chin out a little bit more. And then kind of put a simple disc in here behind the ear to just sort of as a placeholder. I'm gonna have to come back in and give it some depth and dimension. And another thing that I have noticed, and this, all of us, all artists tend to have little quirks and mistakes that we generally make over and over again. And they say that your style is all of the things that you do wrong. So maybe in a sense, me trying to correct all these things might be me removing all of my style. But one of the things I notice is that I tend to draw eyes too big. And not in the anime cartoony too big. It's more that volumetrically, I am putting, for instance, also I've realized I push this eye out too much. I actually need to pull it back. It should be a little bit more recessed in the skull. But I tend to draw eyes a little bit too big in the sense that a lot of times people tend to make heads too big. Because as humans, we spend most of our time looking at people's heads. And because of that, we put more emphasis on them visually. And I have found that for me personally, and I always try to say for me personally, because it's getting a little awkward to draw while I'm holding that. Let me sit him down. Some artists may draw noses too big, mouths too big, hands too big. They may draw heads too small. All of us have our own different quirks. So even though this is a problem that I have, I don't like to state it in the sense that I presume that you guys are having the same struggles that I have. The important thing is to be aware that there probably is something that if you find you're repeatedly having difficulty with your figures, being able to assess what it is that you're repeatedly making too large or too small. Because proportion, when it comes to correcting your mistakes, proportion is the very first one that I think leaps out at most artists, is we tend to exaggerate a certain part of the body. Now even this right here, I realize I'm already falling back into a pattern of making this, as I mentioned, that this head is turned away from us as what, like seeing more of the bottom plane. I'm already starting to profile it out, making it more flat and straightforward. Now, part of that's because that's the kind of angles that we tend to practice more often. But I realize that just in looking at this, I kind of want to go in here, and this is something that would be doing mentally in my head, as opposed to something I'm trying to make visible in the drawing. But I'm showing this, I want to show it to you because I want to show you what's going on in my head as I'm trying to fix this drawing. Is if I realize that I need this picture to be, for lack of a better term, I'm going to put a little box underneath here. And even that, the box should be turned the other way. So let's say let's say that we're looking at a box and you can just see a little bit more of the back than the front and more of the bottom, you know, a fair amount of the bottom. This box I just drew up here is probably a little too exaggerated, but let's say that the face is pointed that way. I need to remember that that's what I'm doing. So I probably want to put some lines in here. I'm putting some construction lines in here just to remind myself that this is the underside. And to be honest, it's rather challenging because that might be a big part of what was wrong with this, is I'm showing still too much profile as well. Because what I started doing was putting lines in here just sort of indicating that we're looking at the underside and trying to keep them all parallel to this. But the real question is, what does this shape, the zygomatic arch, which are the bones that wrap around them, what does that shape become when you're looking at it slightly from behind? And that's the reason why I keep coming back to this guy. So this is going to look slightly not exactly in line with what is going on in that drawing, but that's because from where I'm sitting, I'm a little bit below the camera that you're looking over my shoulder from. So for me, I really am looking less at this and more, I'm seeing it more from the underside, like this. This is what I'm seeing when I'm looking at it, like turned a little bit more away. So I guess what I'm looking for here is me kind of analyzing what are the planes and shapes that this arch makes when it's turned away. From that standpoint, I should just erase these eyes altogether and just work on getting the cheekbone right. Now see, now this makes things start to make sense, because I realized when I was looking at this drawing, I realized I wasn't giving enough depth in terms of how much space there is between the bridge of the nose and that space that goes down to where the actual eyeball is set in the eye socket. But that's because with the head turned away, this distance, part of that, how far down this goes from here, from the bridge of the nose to the cheekbone, is hidden. The cheekbone is up here, but it's turned away, and the actual endpoint is down there somewhere. It's kind of hidden. Not kind of hidden, it's very much hidden. So these are the kind of things that I didn't realize I was leaving out. And that's where having reference to look at while I draw becomes extremely useful. So these are little details that I could have seen in the model when they were taking this pose if I were better at observing actual life, what's happening in front of me. But what happens by doing these sketches where I come back and I analyze my work and I analyze my mistakes is that the next time a model takes a similar pose with the head turned away from me like this and planes become recessed, they turn away, the places where they connect in the form are hidden from me. The next time that happens, I will be aware, or at least hopefully I'll be aware, I'll remember that I did some studies where I said, oh wait, it's not that there is a small amount of space between the bridge of the nose and the cheekbone, it's that that space continues and it's hidden. It's disappearing behind the cheekbone because that head is turning away. These are the kind of things, this right here is the exact reason why I do these studies. So I see a few more comments in the chat. Let me run up and take a look. Oh, see Ask Lubers in the chat. How you doing? Thanks for stopping by. Doing some figure drawing here. We're actually correcting poor figure drawings from class. I'm looking at them and saying, well, what are the mistakes I made and why? Amar says, we're talking about what different artists' specific challenges that they have or mistakes that they find over again. Amar says, mine is the woman's torso, the rib cage to the hip. That's where I tend to make shorter or longer. For faces, since I draw from memory, I tend to lean toward the narrow face, unless I force myself to do differently. Yeah, I think that's the challenge. For me, all this exercise of going back and looking at my drawings and trying to ask what I'm doing wrong is me trying to force myself to do differently. And when I say trying to force myself to do differently, I don't mean to make sure that I always make, let's say that it's making heads too short, or let's say it's the torso. Let's say that I have that same issue. For me, it's not that I always want to make the torso too long, or I always want to make the torso shorter instead of too long. It may be that what I want is to be able to consistently observe the length of the torso of the person, or the figure I'm drawing. That way I can say, all right, this person I intentionally want to have a long torso, so I will consciously make an effort to make them longer, or I'll consciously make an effort to make them shorter if it's what that person's posture is. But the idea is just to be aware that I'm not drawing, that my basic standard for drawing them isn't always too short. I mean, if it's sort of like having the 8 heads high model from Loomis and another figure drawing standards. You know, it's good like to have a constant assessment of where those body parts fall along those 8 head, that 8 head standard. And, you know, something I think I'm going to do for next week, not next week, but next month when I do my Patreon exclusive live stream, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start doing a study group for drawing books. And the first book I think I'm going to do, because it's a book that I've actually wanted to work from, is, let's see here. You guys have seen me bring this up on my channel before. Walt Reed's The Figure. So this book, it's not a very long book. It's, 140-ish pages. And it's a book that I have wanted to sit down and just do a study where I just sit down and draw, like copy the drawings on each page and analyze them. And even this one goes into like the 8 head proportion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the beginning of the book, and I'm just going to sit down and draw directly from these, directly from the book. And I'll talk about what I'm learning, what I'm analyzing, what I intend to get from each study. So I won't necessarily read out all of the text, but I'll basically go through, and this is something that I've been meaning to do for myself, so I'm just going to share that with my Patreon audience. So if you guys are interested in going on that journey, it's going to be starting next month, and once a month I'm just going to go through it, maybe 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages, however many I get through each session. But if you guys are interested in that, I'll put a link for this book online, and if you guys want to sign up for my Patreon, you can start seeing that. And I'll post excerpts, I'll post highlights from each live stream. So even if you're not a Patreon subscriber, I'll still probably take like a 2-minute, 3-minute portion from each live stream of that, and I'll still post that on YouTube, so you guys will still be able to see some of it. So let me pop back in the chat, take a look and see what everyone's talking about. Let's see. Mark asks, how much do live figure drawing classes cost? Well, I take classes at the Animation Guild, and I believe it's $200 for 12 weeks, 1 class per week. So, I think that's around, too tired to do math right now. It's not particularly complicated math, but it's something around $20 a session, which is still really good for most figure drawing classes. There's a group in Los Angeles called the why am I having, Gallery Girls. Gallery Girls. Jennifer Fabos is a figure drawing model who got together and sort of organized a bunch of figure drawing models who were already doing life drawing all over Los Angeles, and basically she promotes it each week. There's you can usually find figure drawing like three or four nights, almost every night of the week, in some weeks. But somewhere in LA, there's a figure drawing workshop happening most nights of the week, and so that and most of them tend to be anywhere from $10 to $20. Some might be 20 or 30. Some of them are themed. They have like a one that they have like a Turkish delights where it's like a full like long evening, or I think it might be 4 or 5 hours, where they have like a food and multiple models in a large venue. Those are really great, and that's worth checking out. If you're not doing something as elaborate as that, most figure drawing workshops tend to be, $15 to $20 a session is kind of average. Some of them it may just be a suggested donation, but most of them, $15 to $20 for like a 3-hour session. That tends to be, if you just do a search for your zip code and figure drawing workshops, you can usually find something somewhere near you. So yeah, that's just a general guideline. It's going to be different depending on what area you live in, but yeah. And it's going to be different depending on whether you're taking instructed classes versus uninstructed classes. Instructed classes are obviously going to be a little bit more expensive because the instructor is giving you their educational material. They're giving you their knowledge. They're taking the time to teach you, and they need to be compensated for that. So instructed classes versus uninstructed classes are going to be a little bit more expensive. But I really like the classes at the Guild, and I tend to take classes there. But yeah, uninstructed classes would be about that much. Let's see. Some more. Amar says, thanks for translating the typing. I know what you mean for most stuff. Iron Rock says, I'm here. I just didn't feel like saying anything. You know what? That's fine. You're usually very vocal in most live streams. If you just want to hang out, just, listen to the stream, please do. I'm happy to have you. I sensed you were there. I can always feel your presence. Let's see. What else do we see in the chat? Oh, Mark asks, how much is the Patreon a month? Well, the lowest tier is $2 a month. I have a $5 and $10 tier. But it's fine if you sign up for just the $2 a month tier, because what I plan to do, and I've been meaning to do this for weeks, I just haven't had time. But what I need to do is just reorganize my tiers. So it's going to be pay what you want. And literally you can just sign up, and if you feel like doing it for $5, $2 a month, you can do that. If you feel like doing it for $5 a month or $10 a month, it's just whatever you feel is valuable to you is what you can sign up for. And you also, let's say that you do it for like $5 a month or let's say you're doing it for $10 a month, and after 3 months you're like, wow, this is getting pretty pricey. I have other stuff I need to spend money on. You don't have to cancel. You can drop down to a $2 a month tier. Or maybe you're at a $2 a month tier, and for 1 month you're like, hey, I've been really enjoying Jeremy's videos. I want to give him a boost. You might say, all right, this month I'm going to sign up for $20 a month. You might do that for a month and then go back down. I want to set it up so that you're not locked in. I just want you guys to be able to enjoy the work that I'm sharing and to learn from the process that I'm sharing. Because I always like to make it feel like it's not so much that I'm doing tutorials per se, as it is, I feel like I learn the most from actually watching people work and see what they do and how they do it. So I feel like the tutorial is my creative process. The figure drawing and how that enhances my comic book work, the comic book work in terms of like the thumbnailing, the inking, the lettering, all the different phases. So if you want to sign up for the $2 a month tier, that's perfect. I'm eventually going to change it so that it's just going to be pay what you want. So all the rewards will be equal. So let's see, what else do we have on here? And again, if you're just watching this, it's patreon.com/GERIMI. So if you guys feel like getting on that, you want to join the figure drawing, the drawing book study group, please do. So let's see here. Amar says, most of the time we tend to draw things we don't see. Well, at least I do so. It's better for me to imagine the object object as a 3D object, so I understand better what should be hidden, and to help me learn how to hide the parts of the body that should be hidden. He said that sounds cool. It's good to see the past at least 30 years. I know live drawing prices have not changed. Well, you know, in terms of thinking of an object as a 3D object, sometimes when I'm sitting drawing quickly in a figure drawing class, like all of these drawings right here, these are 5-minute drawings. I mean, I've been sitting here drawing this slowly while I'm talking to you, and we've still been talking for like a half hour, and I've barely gotten what I drew in here in 5 minutes. So even though I have criticisms that I'm trying to correct in this drawing, sometimes when you're drawing fast, your mind does flatten things out. It does look at it, even though you're trying to think volumetrically, you're trying to think of the head in 3D, sometimes you simply look at a space and say, oh, this space is short, and then you just draw it as a short space. Now I can see that the space is not short so much as it's hidden. You know, I was talking about that I'm only bringing it up again because I thought this is a very important distinction of me figuring out something by coming back and doing this analysis. And part of that analysis is what you said. Thinking of this, not in terms of a flat drawing, but in needing to see this as a three-dimensional object, to see that this point down here where the nose ends and comes down to the eye socket, to see that it is turned away and hidden. So I'm turning this slowly for dramatic sake, but, and also now, hang on, let me see what happens if I turn off one of these lights, because I feel like it's blown out too much. Ooh, that's too dark. Let's see here. Yeah, there's no real great way to pose this so that you could really see. Put the light back on. But yeah, basically what happened is that point that I have right there is getting hidden. Let me move this away from the light a little bit, because maybe then you can see it better. But yeah, so that corner is hidden, and that's what I'm trying to capture the volumes of. And the fact that when I first started drawing this, I think I had mentioned when I erased the eyes the first time that I was all, oh, the eye, I'm drawing it too far forward. It needs to be further back. It's like, no, I was drawing it correctly. It's just that eye is recessed because it's turning away. So this eye is about as forward as it should be. And in fact, that's something a detail I might need to work in here, is that you've got your cheekbone, and then you've got your eye, and this corner that's hidden, the eyeball is actually cutting through that. Or it's covering it, I should say. So a lot of this, in terms of this particular pose, a lot of this is overlapping shapes. Let me see if I can round this out a little bit more. So overlapping shapes, that's what's happening here. You've got your cheekbone in front, you've got your eyeball, you've got the inside of the eye socket, then you've got the side of the nose. So all of these forms are all sitting one on top of the other in very close proximity. And I am wondering, let's bring the camera down for a little bit so you guys can get a closer look at this as I'm drawing. Bring the camera down here. A little bit more. Yeah. So what I was saying was, here you can see the zygomatic arch, the outside of the eye socket here. And even that, I mean, it's not necessarily on top of the cheekbone, but it attaches to the cheekbone. They connect, really. I mean, I drew a slight line here to kind of indicate this surface being on top of it. If anything, since we're looking underside, this surface would be slightly in front. But really, it's one surface. But my point being is that you've got this surface. Then you have the eye socket, it's the eyeball itself. On top of that, you've got the inside of the eye socket, kind of the underside there. You've got that space that I was talking about, the bring this guy here. This space where the bridge of the nose comes down and connects to the actual skull, to the eye socket. You've got this space, which, if I were to make a line of that, like I was saying before, it's covered by this. When I first drew it, I drew it short because I just drew it as a flattened object. But what's really happening is this connects down here. It's covered by the cheekbone, the actual connection between it. The true length of that surface is being hidden by the cheekbone. And that's something that that's the thing that made the drawing a poor drawing in the very first place. That was probably the thing. Between that and the underside of the cheekbone, those were the two things that were screwing me up more than anything. So I'm actually fine with how the nose is. I do feel like I need to show a little bit more of the backside of the nostril to give you that sense that you're, again, I drew that little box. I can bring it up a tiny bit. Yeah, that's all I need. That little box that I drew up here, showing that this is a surface that we're looking at the underside. We can see more of the underside and we can see the backside. So the front plane is actually turned away. And that does mean that there's little subtleties that I want to put in there to give that suggestion of, oh, we're looking at, and to be honest, we're probably not even seeing that much of the backside of the nose. What we're really probably seeing is beneath the cheekbones, the flesh of the muzzle is probably covering where the nose meets. Now, yes, we are still looking at a backside to this. We're looking at something that's turned away from us, but it's only slightly turned away. And more of what we're actually seeing, in fact, all of this, I can kind of, now I'm taking creative liberty because I'm putting lines in here, not necessarily because the lines are there, but because it shows the overlap that I want to show. Me squaring this off slightly, and realistically that should be like probably a light tone as opposed to a line. But me squaring this off a little bit, and that nostril, that far nostril, I think was sticking out way too much. Because as the nose is turning away, the far side of the nostril, realistically, we're only probably going to be seeing just the tip of it. Like just a little bit peeking out, because we're looking at this thing turning away from us. That also probably means that this is going to be coming out more forward. So this is all me just trying to make these things fit into space, and this fits in with what Amar was mentioning in the comments about treating it like a 3D object. So, and then from here, I kind of go back and forth. Let's see, I see Jay King is in the chat, and he says, what's good? He's at work today, so he's got to be on the low to watch. Well, no worries, put your headphones in, I don't want to get you busted. And if it gets too hot, there's always the replay. You don't got to, a lot of times I'll have YouTube videos on when I'm working, and I'll just be listening to the audio of them. So that's one of the reasons why, even though it's very difficult, well, not very difficult, but why it's challenging to sometimes talk and draw at the same time, I want to at least keep the audio information consistent. That way, if you're not able to look at this while you're drawing, while you're doing whatever else you're doing, I enjoy having videos on while I'm working where I listen to other artists talking about their creative process. But sometimes they're drawing something and I'm like, oh, wait, I need to stop. I need to see what they're doing because that's something I understand or take in for myself. So This is probably a bit of an exaggeration. This shouldn't be as dark as I'm drawing it. But what I'm trying to do is get that rounded sense of the ear really looking not from behind, but I want to get the sense of that thickness that you're looking at a surface that is turned away from you. And I probably should make this ear a little bit narrower. It doesn't feel like it's as foreshortened as it should be. Let's say I put a little darker tone in there. And come in here and lighten this up so that you get your surface that's facing the front. It's getting light from this side. You got your surface that's turned away from the light and a bit toned, and then you've got the shadow underneath it, separating it from the actual skull a little bit more. And let's see here. Amaris is in the chat, and she says, "Hey everyone, not feeling well. Off to ER." Oh wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. If it's serious enough, you have to go to the ER. Well, please go take care of your health. That is way more important than sitting and watching my dumbass draw. I hope you feel better. I hope that it's nothing too serious. Go feel better. Take care of your health. So, let's see. I'm going to pull the screen back up a little bit. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm just trying to compare. So, I didn't necessarily have this kind of like skeletal detail in the drawing that I'm originally correcting, but I'm sort of working out where the jawline, where the teeth are connecting to the bottom of the skull. And the way this model's face came down, their lower lip seemed to protrude a little bit. So I think I'm gonna, and again, this is me having to remember that this is a surface that's turned away from me. So it's almost like the very, very front plane is just around a hidden corner. So let me end it, the mouth right there, because there's little things where I realize I might draw it going back too far instead of really getting that sense of it turned away. So let's see here. I see MK says about to start gesture drawing. Good. I'm happy to hear it. Go get your gesture drawing on. And Amara says, speaking of health, I need to do the old man things this year that you need to do once you hit a certain age. Need to do all those checkups before I forget. Yeah, I always try to schedule my annual checkups with the doctor in January. That way, it's almost like I have a whole list of things that I do at the start of every year. Just in terms of like for health maintenance. If I can remember, well, not that I remember. We always think of like the new year as it's the time people start diets or they start going to the gym again. So, medical checkups or doing them in January seems to be a good time for me, just in the sense of, oh, this is the time for me to do all that health maintenance that we may neglect or drag our feet doing. So, let's see here. I think I'm just about done with this guy. I'm just going to quickly sketch in based on let me pull the camera back up now so you can see this in comparison to the original drawing that I was making corrections from. Let's see here. For some weird reason, this continues to drag down and not look all the way at the bottom of the artwork I've got here. Yeah, that's better. Let's see here. Amar says I'm doing some forced poses while he's listening to me talk. He says you're a better man than me. I'm a caveman. He said, yeah, your marriage, that helps because you both have each other's backs. Yeah, my wife and I try to stay on each other about maintaining our health because we're getting older, and we want this journey, this ride, to go for as long as possible. She wants me to be healthy so that I can continue to be creative, and you try to be an inspiration to each other, encourage each other to take care of each other. You have some. It's important to have something that you want to maintain your health for, and whether that's family, kids, friends. As much as before I got married, I very much was I'm very much a hermit and kind of sticking to my own and doing my own thing. And most of my close friends were still my close friends are still kind of pissed they don't see me that often because I'm just most of the time I'm busy doing artwork. But it is important to maintain your health, and definitely being married, I think, is a large encouragement in that. So I'm not paying as much attention to detail to his hair as I did in the original. I just remember that he had sort of a man bun that was up in the back. And this is a pretty sloppy interpretation of it. He's had it sort of bound up in the back. And this is something, now that I'm drawing this ear in here, this is something that I realized, I mentioned to my figure drawing instructor, Carl Ganas, that I observed the other day. I was drawing the ear and I in a class, and I told him, I think I finally figured out the hardest part about drawing the ear is not drawing attention to it. Because if you have a really super rendered out ear, the ear is not something that we spend a lot of time looking at. But that doesn't mean that you can just neglect it. If you just leave it as an empty disc, then it feels unfinished. But if you render the ear with the same level of detail that you render, say, the eye or the nose or the mouth, it kind of looks weird because we don't look at it that much, and we don't want to. The ear, I think, in an illustration, in a drawing, should not draw that much attention to itself. And if you look at the ear in a photograph, you probably don't spend a lot of time looking at it because you're like, it's just an ear. So the challenge is putting enough detail in the ear that it feels like you have given it its due, without over rendering it and trying to draw an ear with so much detail. So, this is the original drawing that I had. I'll move them closer so you can see more of this side by side. And in fact, this is kind of flattened out. I really didn't give it much due in terms of the actual neck muscles. And oddly enough, the last thing that I'm putting in here are the eyes. And the reason why in this particular case I'm doing that is because the eyes are something that most of us, usually if you're going to learn to draw one thing well in the face, it's the eyes. Because we all look at eyes. Eyes are the windows to the soul. People spend a lot of time learning how to render the shit out of eyes and make them deep and interesting. And the thing I find is that you'll spend all of your time rendering eyes, and you won't do any of the work to make any of the things around the eyes. The nose, the actual structure of the skull, mouths, all of those other details. Sometimes people will, no, me. Sometimes in the past, I found that I would neglect the other parts of the body or of the head, of the face, of the skull, to try and get really good eyes, because that's what people pay attention to. And what I found now is if you get a good skull going, then you can just, it'll make you simplify the eyes. It'll make you get to the point of, well, what is important about this that makes it feel like it's appropriately in proportion, appropriately structured. And I think that there was, from the way I'm toning, from the way the original drawing looks, should probably be a little bit more tone here, giving that sense of like the whole cheek turning away, as if the light source is coming from the left and maybe slightly from the front. So I might put just a little bit of tone on the edge. See, the other thing about doing these studies is that this is way more detail than I would normally have the time to put in a 5-minute pose. I mean, what? We're at 51 minutes here. So the original drawing was something that I did in 5 minutes, and now I'm spending, even though I'm drawing pretty slowly, spending close to an hour on a drawing that I did, in 5 minutes originally. But sometimes that's what it takes to go and look through and look at all the mistakes. And let's say that you don't have a large skull to work from. Maybe you have to sit there with like 2 or 3 anatomy books. Or let's say you have one anatomy book and you have to flip through multiple pages to get all of the detail that you're trying to capture, to figure out all of the things that, the mistakes that you want to correct. So I'm just adding in a little bit of tone just to get that sense of, oh, you're looking at something that's lit from the left-hand side. A little bit of tone on the side of the skull. It'd be really easy to go a little bit overboard with this, so I'm trying to use some restraint. And even this, it feels like I'm flattening it out a little bit. So I'm trying to come in here now and sort of give a little bit of a circular sense of volume, sort of spherizing the cheekbone a little bit more. Because I feel like I flattened it out a little bit just in here. Need to pull a little bit of this tone out. See, that happens sometimes. You go in there, you see what you think the drawing needs, and you go a little bit overboard. Yeah. For me, it's very much an ebb and flow where I come in, draw some, erase some, add some more, take some away. I remember there's an apocryphal story that Jack Kirby was working on, I think, an issue of Captain America, and his inker, Joe Sinnott, was sitting across from him, and at one point Kirby went in and was erasing something, and their drawing tables were like facing each other, and Sinnott sees him, and they're on deadline, and he looks up and he's like, hey, they pay you for penciling, not erasing. And I tell that only to poke a little bit of fun at myself in terms of over-laboring my drawings and coming back in and getting sometimes a little bit too caught up in this whole corrective process. But I think part of that is that when I'm studying, I really want to get in here, and it's not that I want to make the best drawings possible to display to you guys. It's that I really want to learn what I'm doing wrong. And then when I'm working on my comic books, the comic book pages are me trying to put that work into practice, and that's where I will draw a little bit faster, a little bit looser, trying to get the energy of the story and the scene. And, you know, and that does mean that sometimes that's where I see a lot of these mistakes that I'm making. It's like, that's the chance for me to try to put what I learn here and in figure drawing class. That's where I get the chance to put it in action in terms of drawing really quick and going for like bold strokes and bold action, and accepting the fact that even then, even after doing studies like this and even after taking figure drawing class, I'm still going to make mistakes. So let's see, in the chat, let me go back up there. Amar says another habit with drawing ears without reference is the habit of creating an ear that looks the same unless you're going for realism, especially in comics. This is for other body parts as well. It's like, yeah, that's in the mentally you kind of want to have sort of stock poses that you can go to, but there is a danger. It's not even a matter of having realism. It's that if you're always using those poses, anytime you deviate from that pose, the drawings may start feeling repetitive because it's always the same angles you're using, or if you deviate other certain body parts, or like if you deviate the pose a little bit, but you're still drawing stock details on top of it, then it's like the details don't line up with the actual figure. For instance, that's where if you're drawing stock heads, you may try to give an interesting angle or pose to the head, but the nose will be crooked, or the eyes won't be on this correct plane in comparison to the eyeballs. I mean, in comparison to the entire skull. Because, you know, if you're just making your details and you master drawing them at this one angle, then anytime you do an angle that's slightly off, it's going to look weird. So I think the challenge is learning not just having these stock poses, but learning how to adapt them to the subtle variations of the human form, so that you're not always drawing them exactly the same, but that you can make these details, like you said, think of them as three-dimensional objects. You can make the details, the nose, the eyes, the other features of the body, make them feel, you know, feel correct or appropriate for whatever changes you've made. So let's see here. Amar says, rendering light and color is another really hard thing for me. I can do it more with grayscale. And that's something I want to get into, is just doing color studies or watercolor studies, so I can start doing color work all the time and get better at it. It's something that I want to push myself to do more of as well. So I don't think there's much point in me rendering this much more than I've done here. Now, I will tell you that even with this one, I still don't feel like I did enough of the underside. This still feels, even though it's turned slightly away, this still feels like it is more of, to bring our old buddy back again, this still feels more like we're looking at this turned away instead of this from the underside. So I was about to say I was going to try and do a quick 5-minute sketch just at the end of doing like a new figure, but I think what I want to do is just draw one more of this, a third correction of me doing this, but really going for that underside. So let's see what happens if I can do that real quick and work just on the structure and not really get into any detail. And I'll do that real quick, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Amar also mentioned someday it will click. Color has so many minor details that can easily be missed based on light, texture, and skin tone. Jay King says, always thankful. I'm always thankful for you showing up. I appreciate every time you're here. I appreciate all you guys spending time with me, taking interest in the creative process and the work that I'm sharing. You guys mean a lot. Art isn't created in a vacuum, so having people here to share this process with makes it worth it. So I'm going to try and go real extreme with this pose. So at this point, it is going to be definitely exaggerating. So let's say that this is the brow line. If we're looking at it in a profile, let's really go for the underside. So, and then let's move. So let's say that this is the line where the ear is in a profile. Let's turn that here. So not quite a 3/4, but almost. So now we're really turning the head away. I'm gonna block the ear in. Because think about that. I spent a whole hour drawing this, and it still isn't at the correct angle that the head should be. And that's one of the reasons why a big lesson that Carl Ganas always tries to beat into our heads, not, pleasantly, kindly, but is to get your basic structure and volume down first before going into any detail. So I am... And by the way, Carl has a great YouTube channel as well. If you look up Ganas Studios, Gnass Studios on YouTube, you can see his channel on there. And he's got some videos on there. He also, if you're not able to take classes at the Animation Guild, he also teaches workshops throughout the year. And he'll have a link on there to his website, so you can see the different workshops. Maybe if you're in the LA area, or you can plan a trip during a time when he has a workshop, so you can sign up for it. It's a good opportunity to learn. I mean, I continue going to instructed classes with him because I feel like I've been studying for almost a decade, and I feel like I can still continue to learn a lot from going to those classes. So now with this, at this extreme angle, it almost feels like the cheekbones are right up with the front of the plane of the skull. So I've turned this probably more than that was. I've now really gone full bore with the exaggeration. Yeah. See, so this definitely feels turned away more than this drawing. But what's interesting is it's turned away more than this one, but it's turned away too much in comparison to this. So it might be that maybe, and this is the reason why I'll do multiple versions of a correction. I won't just draw one drawing and correct it. I'll take a look at, well, what happens if I push that even further and see what it looks like? Because now that I see this, I don't necessarily feel that bad about not pushing the turn even more. Because when I look at this, I'm thinking maybe this is about how much the figure was turned away, because it is off of profile and it is turned away. So maybe this drawing might really be what I'm trying to get at in correcting this. Because now that I push it even further, I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, that really is kind of looking at the back of the skull as opposed to something that's just slightly turned off profile. I mean, a lot of times I'll do drawings like this, and I may draw something only as detailed as this little sketch down here, but I may draw, like, for this, draw 2 or 3 of these to figure out what's really happening structurally, and then go into a detailed drawing like this where I work on placing the features on top of that. So yeah, this little drawing that I've got down here is me pushing this to a larger degree, and now that I've pushed it, I see, no, it's this one is probably actually pretty closer to what I wanted. If anything, I think it's probably just a sense of creating more of these forms turning away from the figure. I feel like this nose, even though it has a sense of volume, that I still don't think I got the sense of the nostrils turning away and seeing kind of the backside of the nostrils. Because it might be that you never see the backside of the nostrils might disappear underneath the muzzle. I think that might be more accurate. And that's something that I maybe sit down with some photo reference or have somebody else pose for me and try and do corrections on. So I think maybe I did get the in terms of the basic structure of what's happening with the head, I think I maybe got that with it. But the features still need massaging. And that's the reason for doing studies like these. And like I said, I've got like a stack of drawings in here for me to go and make corrections on. And I'll continue to do that in between videos where I do comic book work. I'll continue to show you me working on anatomy, gesture, structure, all these basic areas. So that's just about it for today. Let's see. A little bit more on the in the chat. Samar says he's got to run to the UPS. Build an HTML form for work. Get my character designs for my new animation. It's like, wow, it's just, I got these things done this weekend. I've been very productive. I'm happy to hear that. I wish I was as productive as you. I spent a little bit of family time. I've got some family stuff to do later today, but hopefully I'll get to do a little bit more comic book work as well. He says, I hit the big 50 on Monday, but you'll only be 50 in age. You're only as old as you feel. Well, you know what? Happy birthday, Amar. I'm happy to hear it. Here's to 50 more. Happy birthday to you, man. Let's see. Jay King says, enjoy your art, enjoy your day. I appreciate that. Thank you. Same to you. Says, great job. I'm looking forward to the next stream. Ion Rock says, see you next week. Okay, guys. Thank you again so much. Again, if you'd like to support this channel and get bonus content, bonus videos, see even more pages of Morningstar and the creative process behind me producing the work, you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. For as little as $2 a month, you can support this channel, get a bonus live stream every month. You can also read my comic book Morningstar, which is Lucifer's Fall from Heaven, told as a Western. Go to news.jeremy.net. That's news.gerimi.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of Volume 1 of Morningstar or my previous graphic novel, Eye of the Gods, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. I've also got an art book available on there as well. Okay, guys, thank you so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.